doing some balayage. Last time I had like a full highlight was probably like 8 months ago. So we're looking at like 6 months. Obviously when I have volume, it kind of covers it up a little bit, but you can definitely tell I am in need of just some like face frame, and I'm gonna kind of focus on like this section today of like where I part my hair. So it's gonna be more of like a partial, because also underneath is still like fairly bright, and then of course I'm gonna go in and tone it. I'm using L'Oreal Platinum Plus. So I have the Blonde Studio, this is Platinum Plus, and then I'm gonna go ahead and mix it with the Blonde Studio 30 volume. And I actually have some Olaplex number 3 in my hair right now, which I have slept with it in. So I'm gonna start with the 30, but I am gonna add a pinch of the 40 just because it is open air technique. I just need that little boost. And then of course I am gonna add a little bond builder into my formula. And then I'm gonna start with parting my hair, but I'm gonna start on the face frame because that's what I want to be the brightest of pops. You can tell like I've kind of already have that going for me, where it already has that like gradient of like the brightest throughout the mids and ends, and then it just kind of feathers its way up towards the root. So I want to keep it more on the natural looking side. So that's kind of how I've determined my placement. And then I have the Maggi. So this is a nice, I just have like a pinch of that for 40 just for that little boost. And also too, it makes it really creamy. And I'm just mixing this to consistency rather than measuring. Normally I always measure for consistency, but with the Platinum Plus, you can kind of just feel it and work with it. And so I have my tray set up next to me. I have my gloves, so I'll put those on. I have a fresh tail comb. So normally, I really like these. These are by Crest. They're very inexpensive. They're the extra long weaving comb. I like them because it just kind of allows me to take bigger sections. So I can kind of go like across my head instead of, I don't know, I just like them better. But I like the wider tooth because also if I am gonna do any teasing, it will allow me to kind of do that gently, and it allows me to have a little bit more wiggle room, especially for the brushing out process. If I am working on really baby fine hair, I'll go in with the smaller tooth comb because it will kind of allow me to grab more hair and push that up. I'm gonna add a bit of Olaplex to my lightener. This also makes it really smooth and silky. So I do absolutely love the consistency when you add the Olaplex. Now I have a paddle. This one's huge. Normally I like the Redken one or L'Oreal. I don't have them on me right now, but this one is by Fremar, and Fremar also makes a really good one too. This one is kind of just the size that I have right now. So I'm gonna be using that, and it's cute, pretty color. But what I'm looking for is this side has texture to it, and this side is totally smooth. So I like the texture part because when I am saturating the ends with balayage, it will allow me to kind of separate the hair with using the grit, and it will allow me to work that product all the way through to the other side. First is brush my hair. And now it's gonna have a little resistance because I do have some product in there still. It's the number 3 that's kind of dried in there. And then I'm gonna go in, let's see. This is kind of where my hair likes to part, so I'm gonna roll with that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to start by sectioning right at like this little area where my hairline is. So I'm gonna section this way, all the way back. Horizontal back, I guess. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. And the best part about balayage is it doesn't have to be perfect with the partings because you are kind of gonna be taking thicker sections. I'm pretty much gonna start with these panels here, and then I'll do a few underneath just to keep it fluid. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty dark, but we're just gonna pop that a bit. I'm gonna go ahead and take my comb. And almost like you're sectioning for a foil, where you're gonna just kind of section that little hairline out. Just like that. Grab these little baby hairs. And then I'm gonna just section this away. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of go in and like baby light weave that. And then I have all these little baby hairs that I'm just gonna leave out. And then I'm just gonna go through, and I just wanna make sure that also too, when I pull it back, I like where that's living. So we have what they call like peaks and valleys. So I'm gonna kind of come back in and paint these little guys, but you can see like these are the peaks and these are the valleys. So we wanna kind of mock where the sun hits. So when I wear my hair up, I know it's definitely gonna hit these peaks here. And then also too, what I do love is kind of getting these little baby hairs, like kind of right, I guess it would be almost like a sideburn. So I'll come back in and get those. But you pretty much just want to mock, like if you're wearing a ponytail and you're spending days at the beach or whole summer, that's where you want your highlights to live. So I have one of my brushes here. This is like a Schwarzkopf. I'm gonna load my paddle. This way it just looks like that. And then what I'm gonna do is take my balayage brush. This is my favorite one to balayage with because of the way the bristles are kind of like feathered at the ends. It just kind of is a really soft brush to use, but it's also firm at the, I guess at the base. So I'm just gonna take like a bead, and then I'm just gonna start painting. And the way I'm painting this section too, I'm gonna be using my hands for sure. And I'm gonna be focusing the product on the darkest part of my hair. And then the cool thing about balayage is you do overlap the color, but being that it's open air, it's only gonna really brighten the ends. It's not going to over process. Whereas if you were working in a foil, that would be kind of a totally different story because you have max incubation, so it would just keep processing those ends. I like to just be super organic with it and use my hands rather than having to go in and like be perfect with a board. And then also too, like any of this color up here that I don't love the way it's sitting, I'll take a dry brush and kind of just feather that. So you can see it just soften that line. It is kind of hard to see. It might come up on this side, but it is definitely a bit more challenging to see on the side of your head. And then I will always flip this under and kind of check to see that it's still clean on the underneath. One of the biggest keys with balayage is what you see is what you get. So ultimately, if you see kind of like a pool of lightener, it is going to lift that way, and that is how you get spots as well. And also, if it's too diffused, it's not gonna lift enough. So that's how you end up with super like orangey sections. Just wanna make sure I get pretty bright near the hairline there. Also too, you can flip your brush around and kind of just wipe. So I am going to take a piece of cotton and just lay that flat. And then I'll come in on the other side and just double check. So ultimately, for the max saturation, meaning you're covering both sides with lightener, that is where you're gonna get the max brightness. So if you are pushing the product all the way through, and just make sure you do go back and check to make sure that both sides look aesthetically pleasing, because like I said, what you see is what will lift. And also too with balayage, like you're kind of taking bigger sections than you would a foil, because this also allows for any cushion underneath, which is a good thing. Now normally I would be holding the board the entire time if I'm working on a client, but being that I'm doing this myself, I only have so many hands. I have the board kind of just in front of me on my tray, and I'm just kind of taking from it as I need. Just take a little wipe. So you're gonna load the brush with that little like bead. So it's not a lot of product, but it will allow for perfect glidability. This is a perfect place where I would love to kind of like paint here and shadow back here. I don't want to pop it on this other side because the sun would pretty much not really see that. And you can kind of see I'm just kind of touching up what I've already done before. But this way when I wear my hair back, it will just kind of soften like that. And you can kind of see that too, like when you are taking sections before you paint, just kind of like see where it would sit and see where you like the placement. Again, with balayage, like it's always good to have a vision, but almost the less perfect, the better it is. And what I really like to do is kind of start at the middle and then work my way up. And this is kind of like a 3D piece, meaning I'm painting like both the underneath and the top of that section. Then I'm gonna take the rest of this, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back in, clean off my brush, and I'm actually gonna weave it just with that. And then I'm gonna focus on painting that weave. Also with balayage, super important to use tension. Tension will hold the hair taut. This way you don't have buckling. If you hold it like this and you just start painting the hair, it's gonna get messy and you're gonna end up with a crazy end result. You're gonna end up with spotting and it is not going to be cute. Again, I do want max brightness because I'm working in the front, so I am going to fully saturate. And I'm kind of starting now in like zone 2 and working my way towards zone 3 with that. And I also, being that the underneath has been pre-lightened, and by the underneath I mean the very ends, has been pre-lightened, like down here. I'm just like kind of blending it, but I'm not adding more product to saturate those ends. So what you can do is kind of bring them together and just kind of, this is where I get creative and use my hands, and I'll just kind of do that. This way you get that pop, and you bring those two pieces together. So this will add some fluidity to the color. Again, I'm not totally like saturating, so they're not gonna be, it's not gonna be too over processed by any means. And then what I am gonna do this time is I'm gonna cover it with saran wrap. This way too, it won't dry out. So this section I'm gonna start lower, so kind of just touching up what I already have. And being that I'm doing it on myself, I am separating that section, so I'm just gonna start up here. And when you are painting, you do want it to look like you're kind of like icing a cake. So if you see too much hair through it, the product isn't gonna stay wet enough, long enough, and it's gonna dry out, and that's where you're gonna end up with, again, super brassy hair. So what you wanna do is kind of just ice that cake very gently and keep it like, I mean, my lightener is like a very, very pale blue, like white looking. So that's what you wanna see. You don't wanna be able to see your hair through it. Make sure you wipe any fingerprints, because again, what you see is what you'll get. I would hate for your end result to have kind of just like a spot missing from you just kind of working through with your hands. And the cotton too, like not everyone uses it. I don't always use it, but it does act as a little barrier. So this way, especially because I'm not taking V's, there's no cushion underneath to kind of prevent lightener from spilling through or bleeding through. In that case, that's why I'm using the cotton. And I'm also flipping it on the inside as well, as you can see, because this allows for when my hair comes forward, I can see those pops of blonde. So this way they're on both sides. And I really like this saran wrap because it does kind of stick to itself, which I like because it keeps everything able to like stay in place. Also, I always make sure I have a clean brush. This allows any mess that you have to erase already on the hair. And by combing that too, it allows for me to like separate the hair so I can achieve that baby light effect. And then I'm gonna just protect my skin by just laying that down gently. So I am doing pretty much about 3 sections total on each side, just because again, I'm only doing a partial, so I don't want to overkill it, especially because my placement is gonna be super impactful. So I'm just a firm believer in less is more. So for this, I'm really only gonna be doing some good like money pieces. If you guys ever get just like loose hair, just get it out of there. It will make a total mess if you just try to work with it. Because what we really need is just a smooth canvas, paintable canvas, one that is easy to work on and to glide through. And if you have a bunch of hairs, like kind of look at them as like little fibers and just getting in the way and roughing things up. Like when you're getting to the top sections, elevation is also key, because that is what is going to help also from any bleed marks. Because if you keep the hair super flat and you paint on it, you're just gonna push the product right through. And then sometimes too, I'll take the back of my brush and I'll just kind of clean that up underneath. And you'll see you get a good amount of product and it kind of just fades it out on its own. Cleaned off my brush a bit, loaded up. And then in here too, that V is just like a little too harsh. So grab my clean brush, and I always keep wiping the clean brush just to get any product off of it and keep it clean. And then I'm gonna go into the center here and just point it and just kind of feather that. And I have max tension pulling from my scalp, and then I'll repaint those little points and then stick that little guy in there. Grab just like a little section of hair just from underneath, and I'm just gonna go ahead and just pop those. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of take kind of like a 1/2 inch section instead of like an 1/8 or a 1/4 inch. And that's just the lightener, guys. That's, don't worry. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of weave out a couple of pops in there. And then I'm gonna weave it again for baby lights. And then what I like to do for these front pieces is sometimes they are broken, sometimes it's broken hair just from heat damage or color or anything, and I'll just kind of take my comb and gently brush out any of those baby hairs, like baby hairs, that I kind of want to keep those out just so we can allow them to flourish and grow. So I'm not mixing new product just yet because my hairline is so fragile. So I'm kind of using it as an advantage that my product has already is already not as fresh, so it's not as strong. So instead of lowering my developer, I'm just gonna use kind of like already oxidized product. And you can see I'm kind of painting in where like I parted it in those peaks. And I'll remove any color that fell. And then I'm gonna go back on the other side and just resaturate. And I'm just gonna paint, just kind of giving that like baby light effect. And then whatever is left, I'm just gonna smooth that down. Again, this hair is super fragile in the front, so I'm not gonna like oversaturate those ends. My main mission is to just brighten up wherever you see brown. And I am a big ponytail girl, if you couldn't catch that already. So these front pieces are very, very, very important. So I'm just gonna grab like a little bit of cotton and just place it there like that. So now I have finished that like front section, and I don't really want my money piece to be like super thick. I like it a little bit more natural, so if anything, I'm just gonna take this whole top section and section it just straight across. And what I'm actually gonna do is just take that whole section and I'm just gonna tease it. And I'm not gonna go all the way to the root area because I do want it a bit more diffused. I want it more natural. And I also still really do like a good kind of like lived in soft look, because this way if I don't do my color for 6 months, it still isn't, I can still get away with it. I'm actually gonna go and kind of pack this in a little bit more to give me a little bit more room. And I'm gonna take sections now, just going up my head like this. Alright, so we are back. I had processed and rinsed, so now we have some very light blonde, especially around the face. You can tell my money piece in the front is very, very like dainty. So I have it kind of just soft, but this way when I wear my hair back, you have all this highlight. And then it's hard to tell when it's wet, but of course I'm going to kind of tone now. So I'm gonna kind of bring some of this color down. This way you still have highlight that comes close to the root, but instead of it kind of being that harsh line, it's just gonna soften that. So I mixed 3 different toners. In this bowl, I have Redken Shades EQ, I have 7M, and a little bit of 7NA because I also impart ginger, so we try to cancel that out. For the very front, I have like a little bit of 9M and 8N. So I'll kind of paint that on last, also because this is kind of drying. I do have a spray bottle just in case, because also too, when you tone hair when it's dry, it just kind of drinks it up, and I don't want it to get too muddy looking. You can tell like my hair is super golden, so I mixed up in my bottle for my ends, my mids and ends, a little bit of, I did 10GI and a lot of 10P with some clear and just like a little bit of 10N just to kind of keep that neutralization in there. I'm gonna start toning from my root area. This way it has the most amount of time to sit on there. So I'm just gonna kind of tone feathering this way, and then I'll part going back and forth. You'll see like I am gonna drag some of that down just so I get a really soft lived in like feathered look. And this is kind of, you can see like I'm just kind of painting, starting going all the way down this way. And again, this was a partial. My back wasn't completely done. I'll save that for a buddy maybe. And I'm really saturating up in here where I want it to grab. And then I'm just gonna take a comb and just kind of lightly brush down. So I'm gonna take really fine, pretty fine sections and go this way, and you can see definitely need some toner in here. Keep in mind with balayage, you are going to be starting with a very warm end result pre-toner. This is especially for brunettes because you're only getting so much, you're only getting a few levels of lift. So you really need to combat that, which is why toner is so important. So I will almost never balayage without toner. Plus, you don't want it to look too stripy either. Kind of just gonna touch that hairline because I do want that to get a little bit deeper. And also too, like as you work through, you can see where you painted. And I know under here I only have like this little guy in here, but I didn't really feather too much up. And just for this partial, I mixed about an ounce for this root area. And if I do see like a really brassy piece in my hairline, I'll also, I'm not afraid to make it darker with this toner that I'm using kind of for the rest of the head. But if you need to, you can just deepen that a little bit. Also too, if it's brassy and not just yellow, you need a little bit deeper of a toner. Because if you're using just like 9s and 10s, it's not gonna correct what you need it to. I'm gonna go ahead and comb that down and working section by section. And you can kind of see it starting to deepen a bit, especially on this side. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll watch it on my phone and I'll set a timer and kind of like every 5 minutes I'll start to comb down just a little bit more, kind of creating that gradient. And then I am gonna grab a little bit of water for this area, just because I don't want it to totally drink up my toner. I don't want it to get muddy. And then I do have my hairline toner, and I'm just gonna paint over that and come in from underneath and start painting just that. And I'm also too like not really too afraid to kind of give that hairline a little bit of depth, just because I also don't want it to look stripy. I much prefer it to be more of that like gradient. This is only like an 8 and 9, so it's not gonna get too dark. And then of course you can go in and clean up your hairline. So on the hairline, you'll see like I'm only using an 8 and 9, so it's not gonna get too dark. All right, so we're pretty even both sides. So then what I'm gonna go in and do is my toner for my ends, because this has been sitting already almost 5 minutes. So by the time I put this on and let this process for about 5 minutes, it'll be like 15 that it will sit. So it's all about the timing too. So what I'm gonna do is kind of squeeze a little air, and I'm not gonna shake it, but I'm just gently going to mix it. And this part can get fairly messy. I should be doing this in my bathroom, but can't film in there. So I'm kind of just working it through, and then I am going to even take my comb, because even though it's wide tooth, it still is going to separate the hair. It's going to give me enough separation to work through. And then we'll start in the back on this side. So I'm going to just work side to side on this, pretty much just so we get some evenness. So for this part, so I'll pull this out, and what I see, I'm actually going to take this and kind of just feather that going this way. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my toner and start applying that even over top of my like root shadow. And then I'm just gonna bring it kind of halfway, feathering it out, brushing it out. I'm dragging the comb all the way down, but I'm not applying it to the ends just yet, because I do want to keep those like max brightness. So I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this side. What I am gonna do is just kind of pull out this very, very hairline and just keep that out for like the very last. And I'm gonna just repeat the same thing on this side, just keeping that hairline out. Also too, with the hairline, it doesn't really need that much toning because I left it on the longest, so it's already the brightest. Now I'm just gonna kind of marry everything together. This part really does get so messy. And now I'm just gonna start bringing it through my ends. So also I did add a lot of clear to this, so it will still process pretty bright. And with the tones that I use, but just a little bit slower and a little bit more diluted. Even though I did use 10s, I just kind of want that tone. I didn't want it to get dark, but this will also allow it to process at like max sheerness, I guess. And then I'm using this wet brush because this is what's like, having that fine tooth is what is going to really, really blend everything, and you'll be able to see it. This is the exact reason hairstylists wear black all the time. And then it looks like we're getting about to rinse, so I'm just gonna take the toner and just kind of kiss that hairline, start incorporating that. But you can see the gradation. And my hair turns really, really gold naturally, so that's why I added more pea to kind of combat that warmth. But I know it'll just come back anyway, so I will let this finish processing and then go rinse it out and then come back for the final end results. Made it out of the shampoo, and now my hair is wet, but I can already tell that I'm digging the color. It's gonna be a little bit pearly, but within like a shampoo, it will kind of neutralize. Definitely feeling brighter already. So let's give it a dry and we'll see where we're at. Alrighty, so there we have it. Obviously I haven't fully dried it yet, but kind of the areas that I did color you can see. So I have a nice bright front without it being too streaky in the front, which is what I was going for. you can tell like I have that gradient of like the highlights kind of coming up closer to the root, but still being super feathered and very, very soft for. So it's like you can't really see where the highlights are starting because they're just kind of soft and natural and like feathery. And then if I do flip my hair, I'll still have plenty of dimension on both sides. So there you have it. That's your at-home balayage and tone. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have any other requests, you know where to find me. But this was a good little pick-me-up, especially for being in quarantine and not having had color for about 6 months. Definitely feel a bit better. So, alrighty. Thanks again, guys. Enjoy. And don't try this at home. This also is strictly for professionals only, so don't be thinking you can watch this and try it at home because it is not as easy as it looks.